Hello, welcome back to All for United WSC. We're 24 hours away from, what time's kick-off? So 5:15. So roughly this time tomorrow, we'll know whether we're going to be playing at Wembley or not, and towards the end of the season in our first ever final. So that's something to look forward to as well. So we've got a whole host of things to get into. We're going to talk about Leon to start with, obviously the news that came out in the last a couple of days. Obviously talk a little bit about Emma Watson, considering the man who broke the story is on screen with us as well. So we're also going to talk a little bit about that and obviously get into the game as well as the all things around it. So Jamie, firstly, welcome back. It's been a hell of a long time. We were just saying before we went live, it was middle of summer last year that you came on last. So it's been a while. Firstly, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, it's been a while. In summer, I had a newborn, and now she's 10 months, so it tells you how long it's been. It's been quite a busy season for me, both on and off the pitch, as it were. But I'm happy to be back and talk about United with you guys.
Certainly, we are glad to have you back involved. Obviously, everyone in the comments, get your questions in, your thoughts in, everything like that. Good evening. Are we up for the cut? Of course we are. I'm going to give my thoughts a little bit later. Barry thinks I'm really weird for thinking it, so I'll get to that in just a little bit when it comes to my thoughts.
You could have just stopped at weird.
we'll come to. I mean, yeah. I don't think many is going to argue with that, so we'll come to that in just a little bit. But Barry, I'll come to you first, and we'll talk about Leon. Obviously, news she's going out on loan to the end of the season. Really weird timing. I didn't think we'd be getting transfer departures in the middle of April, but there we are. A couple of whatever it is, 6 or 7 weeks left of the season. Were you surprised when that? Because there was kind of rumours, and then a few hours later, the club officially announced it's a loan deal. But what do you make of that one?
I'm not surprised that, like you, did it happen now? That's the bit that's got me more than anything. And I suppose that there were the rumours as well, weren't there, that there was a bid from Italy during the transfer window, which could have had some loan money involved as well. So, yeah, it does feel a bit like we missed out a bit on that one because she hasn't been anywhere near the team. But I already tweeted out my thoughts on that. I think it's 100% the right move, both for Leon and for Manchester United, because she's not getting a look in. She's nowhere near the team. And, I know people don't like to hear it, but rightly so, because we're where we are without her being there. So I find it difficult. I don't fully understand it, but I think this is the key thing. We don't fully understand it. There may be people that are more in the know than I, that are more aware of what goes on behind the scenes. Cough, cough. But I ain't got a clue. So I know nothing. I just sit here and look at what I see from the outside. And for me, the end product is what matters. We see good football. We enjoy the football. We're scoring goals. We've got more goals this season than we had last season, more points than we had last season. We're in the FA Cup semi-final for the first time. And all of this was done without Adriana Leon. So, it's goodbye. It's good luck. I hope she does well. I'm not doubting her qualities as a player, but I don't really think she was ever really starting lineup material once this trio up front got going. I say trio, obviously, it's pick your own poison when it comes to the right side. But in terms of Russo and Galton, she wasn't getting those out of the starting lineup, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair points Barry raised. I mean, Jamie, what do you kind of think on the move when it came out yesterday? Because obviously, the NWSL is obviously on a different timeline to the WSL in terms of that when their league starts and so on. So there obviously is that. But what did you make of the move? Because as we've said, we've not seen her at all. Many questions have been asked, not even in the squad for a lot of games as well. That potentially something off the field has potentially happened to cause that, because at the start of the season she started well. I think she had a good pre-season. She started the season quite well, got a couple of goals, and it was looking good. But what did you make on the news of the loan yesterday?
I think, like you said, in terms of timing wise, obviously they've run the different schedule. Their transfer windows come at different times. It seems like it's more of like a benefit to her, because obviously there's 3 months to the World Cup. She's got till the end of June to play games and get match fit to make sure that she's playing an important role for Canada. Obviously, I don't think it affects United too much in the sense that, like Barry says, she's not been playing, so you can't really judge what the squad would be without her when she's not really been in it. You alluded to she could have left in January. There was talk of that, but Mark was asked very soon after that. I think it was early February after the Everton game, and he referred to her as like our player, basically. So in that could have just been lip service, I don't know, but in their mind at that time, squad depth wise, they considered her too valuable to let go and lose. But maybe you fast forward 2 months to now, she's still not come into the team naturally. She's played far less. I don't think she's played at all since January, and I think that's and then, like you said before, she started well, but then sort of just disappeared off the face of the earth, as it seemed. He said about her, I think in terms of like adaptation, obviously she's played in England for 3 or 4 years prior to coming to United, but for a team that played in a different way, and he's very meticulous and very precise about what he wants in terms of players in his system. And, whether rightly or wrongly, that could be considered as a flaw, that he's too precious about who does what. And he's very detail orientated. I'll just go off on a tangent and a little bit of a plug here, but I spoke to Hannah Blundell last week for an interview that's going to be in the program tomorrow. So everybody go and buy it when you get to the stadium, if you go in. And she mentioned the detail of the coaching staff and the manager that's like really helped her game come on. So it really is like those sort of, she referred to it as 1% and 2%. So if he's not seeing that, then he's not gonna maybe take risks. I don't know. Like it's been said before about other players, about like Vilde Barisa. She's obviously very good going forward, but he's always consistently picked up on sort of the defensive side of her game, and that's sort of been the reason why she hasn't played as often as perhaps she deserves, or perhaps people might want. So I think from like a personnel point of view, it's just one of those, like it's just not worked out the way that probably both parties would have expected to or hoped so, because she said when she first arrived that it was a conversation with him that convinced her to join, that it was the right project, and the coaching philosophies and all that kind of thing aligned. But clearly at some point along the line it hasn't, or it's broken down, or she's just not doing what he wanted, and that's not enough at this point, because if he's searching for 100% and she's only giving 99, for example, then he's in a position where he's got to be so hypercritical. And that's not to criticize the player or criticize the manager, because personally I'm not a fan of the sort of witch hunt to lay blame at somebody's door for this happening, because you don't want new signings to arrive and then not play and then leave, because it's all a bit of a waste of time for everybody. But it's just one of those things. Not every single signing is always going to be a home run, and sometimes you have to accept that and just move on. I don't know.
That last thing you said there is absolutely bang on. I think everyone expects every single signing to work, and there's a couple of people in the comments saying, "Why did we sign her?" To be honest, I just don't think it's worked. I think it's one of those where we tried it, it's not worked, and I will be very, very surprised if she's in a United kit in pre-season.
Also, with all this, Connor, you've got to take into account the fact that the money you're talking about in the WSL is far less than it would be in the men's game. Now, I'm going to mention a name now, Angel Di Maria. Everyone was really excited about him coming to the United team, and he didn't last very long either, did he? And this is what I mean. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't work, as people have said. But I think every transfer is a gamble. It's never guaranteed to work out. You go based on previous statistics, previous matches you've seen, previous information. But what you don't have is that ability to have them at your team. Mark Skinner has been criticised for taking a lot of players that he's worked with before. But there's a reason why people do that. They take people they've been with before because they know their attitude, they know their application, and they know their ability. 3 great A's you could use there potentially. Love a bit of alliteration, as you well know, Connor. So I think for me, people have got to be a little bit more understanding of the process. It's not going to work. It's not always going to work. We were saying that when Jamie came on, it was for that conversation about Tunkara. And ironically, Jamie's had probably as many appearances for all for United as Tunkara has for United since that actually happened. So, I just think people need to a calm down. It's a shame, but like we said, it's not necessarily a reflection on the club. It's not necessarily a reflection on the player. Sometimes it just doesn't fit, and we move on. Hopefully, she does well in the World Cup, winning, a runners-up medal to the Lionesses.
That would be quite something, wouldn't it? Yeah, I think I just don't really. If she was starting every week and scoring, I'd be sat here going, "What the hell are we doing?" And even if she was a bench player, to be honest, I'd be a bit like, I know that's what she probably should be ability-wise, but she hasn't been. And it's like Barry said, it's not like we've missed that this season. Williams has come in, scored goals. Garcia's come in, scored goals. So has Paris. I don't think she's been needed, as good as a player she is, and I've been calling for her to play more because I think there is such a good player in there. But everyone's saying, "Oh, well, Portland wants her." Portland only really want her, I think, because Becky's out. Personally, people might shoot me for that because of the injuries that they've got there. They needed somebody. Leon needs minutes for the World Cup, so it works for all parties. So yeah, not too fussed. Yes, Mike, it depends who you listen to. Everyone's got the people that they trust and they want to listen to. I'm not going to say any more on it because I'll get myself in trouble. So I'm just going to shut up. But yeah, there we are. On a positive note, though, Jamie, something you broke the other day that we'll just quickly ask you about while you're here. Emma Watson, obviously another youngster. There's obviously the talk from Evie about Evie as well from Aston Villa. Seems to be United are after a certain type. We had Graham on the show a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about this, that United seem to be focusing on a lot of promising youngsters coming through. Emma Watson, I've got to be honest, from the games we saw in Scotland, I'm now convinced she's going to be the next Ballon d'Or winner, but just based on those performances. But what do you kind of make of that one? Obviously, you wrote the article about it at the time. What's the dealings going on there?
I just think, like you said, it seems to be a particular strategy of the club. It's kind of, it's a little bit cliched, but like the United way of taking youngsters, making them somebody rather than necessarily going after the really big superstars. If you compare the men's game, for example, that hasn't always really worked. So yeah, going for youngsters, and like you said, Catherine at the Mail, she did the Evie Rabjan story, and then there's interesting Katie Robinson as well, who's a little bit older and a bit more established, but it's a similar kind of profile and vibe from the club. I would expect there to be more established targets as well further down the line, but I would expect that kind of ties into what happens in the remainder of the season, because obviously you're going to have like plan A and plan B that are very, very different in terms of Champions League or no Champions League, because it will affect the budget, it will affect how attractive the club is in the immediate short term. And yeah, so with Emma Watson, who a lot of people, when that first got tweeted out, a lot of people were making sort of Harry Potter references, and it kind of went over my head, and I didn't really get it. And I was like, I thought just people were being a bit sarky and stuff, and I was like, what? But yeah, it took me a while to get there. But yeah, I believe that the club wanted her in the summer when she was only 16. I think she turned 17 a few months ago. Clearly, she's very talented. You're not sure how ready, like for first team. Obviously, Grace Linton had played first team games before she arrived, but hasn't since then, and then has gone out on loan. And I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that if it was to go through to completion, that it could be a similar sort of situation, that you're asking a lot for a 17-year-old, albeit a very good one, to come straight into a team that's potentially in the Champions League and is in the title challenge again. I've sort of alluded before to Mark being very patient and very precise and meticulous in what he wants from people. So in terms of like learning the system and adapting to specific game plans and that kind of thing, that's been mentioned in regard to Grace Linton as well. And obviously she's thrived since going to Bristol City, and that's kind of worked out for everybody in getting like competitive minutes at a club that's actually fighting for something meaningful in terms of their like promotion charge. So yeah, it as it stands, it looks good to go through for Watson. I'm not entirely sure of the legality of the sort of, the legal side of it in the sense of professional contracts. Obviously, when you get to 18, you sign professional contracts, so she'd probably be on like youth terms to begin with, and it all gets a bit messy and legalese and that kind of thing. But in principle, yeah, it looks good to go, and she's one for the future.
Certainly isn't it? It's I don't think it's a bad thing. Get some of the youngsters tied down. It's what a lot of, look at Chelsea in the past. Just sign a load of youngsters, put them out on loan, and if something good comes of it, brilliant. Grace Clinton's absolutely smashing it for Bristol. It looks like they're going to come up, so that's been a successful one. Just very quickly on that question, off memory, from the short amount I've seen her, she played fullback. I can imagine she can play both and be moulded into both, considering she's only 17. So I would imagine she can play both positions, as most youngsters can coming through, in defensive roles in particular. But fullback, I think it was against Leicester, just off memory, like earlier in the season. But you're testing my memory here. I can't even remember what happened yesterday, let alone at the start of the season. Yes, you talk. People have an issue with this, that Hanson's smashing it for Villa. I don't get it. That's a good thing, right? We want her to do well, so when she comes back, there's a better player for us. I don't know. It's a good move.
That's literally what the loan system was invented for, Connor. It's like people being upset that David Beckham did well at Preston North End. Oh, damn you, David! How dare you? Why? It's exactly what we want, and it's good for the player as well. And I think that's so vital that we don't forget there are players in this. Actual human beings with actual feelings as well. I don't really want the WSL to ever get down to the Premier League point of view. Everyone's just a commodity and you are literally just part of the business. That's what I like about it, is that they are all people that you can get to know and get to like, and they're responsive to that. But yeah, because I know that now that Jamie's on board fully with the Harry Potter references for young Emma, I just thought I'd throw out, he's no muggle anymore, which is good. Apparently she's got a wanderer left foot, and we're looking to see her cast a spell over the WSL. So I think it should be really good. People again seem surprised that the Manchester United scouting system has found youngsters that are worth purchasing, and this is what I think is so bizarre. It's as if who is this person, and all of a sudden we actually find someone. It's not an accident. People actually do this. They go, we're not going eeny, meeny, miny, mo. It's not like when we was having World War II and people just picked a refugee based on whether they've got good hair or nits. It's not the case. People actually take their time to look through these things. So there's no surprise that she is magical.
I'm kind of dreading this signing now, because all of the puns you're going to come up with throughout the season.
Cannot wait to go through that Gryffindor.
For love of God.
And
we're going to have this all summer, that's for sure. With a few of those. At least, gutted, but Scotland aren't at the World Cup, so at least we won't be getting that through the World Cup from Barry. But there we are. Yeah, it's nothing unusual. There we are. Let's move on to the game then. Obviously, that old semi-final that we're playing tomorrow in less than 24 hours' time. Jamie, I want to come to you and start with the attendance. Emma Sanders tweeted just before we went live that 4,200 have been sold. Obviously, that might not necessarily translate to attendance. We don't know how many of those are going to turn up and all those kind of things. What have you made of the kind of promotion and kind of everything leading up to it? Because for an FA Cup semi-final, obviously first time in it, very, very strong chance of getting to the final. How have you kind of seen it from the outside, looking at the club's kind of promotion and everything around it? And is 4,000 a good number if that's what turns up tomorrow? Do you think that's a pretty decent number considering the turnaround time from the quarters?
I would say in excess of 4,000 probably is good. Like you say, if all those people who bought tickets do turn up, similar sort of level league games against likes of Brighton or Leicester in the last few months have been around the sort of 3.5 mark. So it is an inflation on that, obviously for a game of more meaning in terms of like the wider context. The only thing I would say with it being a 5:15 kickoff, that I know that evening kickoffs can like suppress the numbers a little bit, just because if you've got families with kids, for example, and it's just lunchtime kickoffs tend to draw in the bigger crowds. It does seem. Obviously, there was Chelsea back in November. That was the Sky Sport 6:45 on a Sunday. That was around 6,000, and then a couple of months later, there was Liverpool. That was like lunchtime, and the difference there was around 1,500 people. For Chelsea, arguably being a bigger and more important game, that got that many less people. So I think you're always going to get the sort of arguments that kickoff times do affect, perhaps more so in the women's game, because if you play in a men's cup final at Old Trafford and somebody doesn't want to go because it's an awkward time, there will always be somebody else and a queue of 10 people for every one ticket there, and you probably haven't got that depth of support at this stage. Obviously, if it was Old Trafford, it would be bigger, but the kind of turnaround there was probably not very feasible. And
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I was just having a quick look. So Villa, the same tweet, obviously, from Emma Sanders. Understand Aston Villa are expecting at least 4,500, hoping to reach 5. Obviously, they're playing 2:00, I think it is, on Sunday. So obviously, they've got a better time if you're looking at it from that point of view. This is kind of going to lead me on to what I was hinting at earlier, Barry. But is it because a lot of fans are just like myself are expecting United just to turn up and win this very comfortably? There's not really too much. You expect an FA Cup semi-final to have a little bit of jeopardy in it. Do you think that because a lot of fans maybe aren't thinking that, and we're just expecting to turn up, have a great day out, 4-5-0, job done, and a lot of fans are already thinking of Wembley because, I mean, rightfully so. You look at the league form and everything else. But do you maybe think that's had a little bit of an impact, or do you just think kickoff time moved to later on a Saturday that it might have had a bit of an impact as well?
I think fans are entitled to think whatever they want, as long as the squad aren't turning up thinking it's going to be a 4 or 5-0 battering and they're just going to make it through easy. Then I think, you're quite within your rights to think what you want on that one. Do I expect us to get through? Absolutely, I do. Do I expect us to score at least 4? Absolutely, I do. Will we? Who knows? I expect us to get 10 past Leicester and we only managed 1. So you never know. Will it affect the attendance? Lots of things affect the attendance. Depends on what's going on. People are talking here about the Grand National starting at the same time. I mean, the only horse race I'll be interested in is this 4-horse race to the final of the FA Cup. Much less the chance of a thoroughbred being shot down as well because it's fallen over one of the fences. I think, let's worry more about whether you're just enjoying the game or not. And I think there will be more people that turn up than we expect. But yes, 5:15 is a tricky time. It depends on where you live, what your travel time is. If you're in Manchester and you're coming over to LSV, it's maybe 30 minutes or so. It's not so big of a trip back. If you're coming from down south or further north or from the Midlands, it's a bit more of a trek, isn't it? So I think there's lots of things that will decide that. If it's in the Sunday, I mean, you would argue the Saturday's better than the Sunday because, a late night on a Saturday isn't the end of the world. They might not need to be up early Sunday morning. But no, I don't know. Obviously, a bigger game, a bigger name, we've said this many times, would potentially have drawn a bigger crowd. But that's also from the away fans as well. How many Brighton fans are genuinely going to want to make the trip all the way down from the south coast to Manchester? Because will they be sitting there and thinking, well, we're just going to get spanked again, so what's the point? It's a long trip just to see your team concede 4 and not show any fight and desire. So it could work both ways in that respect. Will it be the case? I don't know. I think whatever happens, it's going to be more than 2,000. And, that's roughly sort of where the average attendance was last season. So for me personally, 2,000 plus attendance, I don't think we've really dropped below our lowest ones of last season. So for me, either way, it's all good. It's growing, and that's what we want.
No, I tend to agree with that. I think anything more than 3.5, fantastic. I think is decent enough. Ellie, you've asked the perfect question because that's something I wanted to talk about. I'm going to come to that in just a second because that is exactly where I wanted to go with this. But yeah, I think 4,000, if that's what turns up, fantastic. It's semi-final. I'm sure. Well, Wembley's already sold about 50, albeit we don't know how many of those are neutral because of the weird system of selling a load of tickets before anyone knows who's there. But that's the end of it. It's what it is. Something I wanted to talk about. And obviously, we're going to talk about some, lineups and that kind of thing. Obviously, from the last time we played Brighton, Tooney and Vilder on the wing. Do we want to see that again? Probably not. But we're going to get to all of that, and we'll come to predictions at the end. But something Ellie mentioned is kind of how I'm feeling going into this. And Jamie, I'll start with you because I already know Barry's thoughts. Now, I've been called very weird for this through most of the day because I actually wish we were playing a more difficult side because for me there's always a little bit of jeopardy because you never know how a game's going to go. But I'm a little bit like my head's already in the final because of how easy we've played against Brighton and how poor Brighton have been this season. Ellie's asking her, would you prefer us to go and smash goals in or some sort of tricky game? I prefer closer games and you win it by the odd goal or a couple of goals. And I don't know, I'm feeling a little bit different about this game purely because I just think we'll turn up and absolutely smack them. But there is that time. I mean, it might not. We might have a really difficult afternoon/evening, and it could be a really close one. How are you kind of feeling going into it? Looking at it from that prospect, are you a little bit weird like me and would have preferred maybe a tougher side, or are you just happy that United have got a really good chance of getting to Wembley?
Well, I'll tell you that I'm sure that the players and the staff would love to smash the goals in the first half and have the job sewn up by half time. Me with my media hat on, there is nothing worse than a tight game that gets decided right at the end, because you've got to keep track of it all the way through, and then suddenly at the end that goes out the window and you've got to rewrite everything. It changes the way that you watch football if you're working a game, because you pray for the comfortable 3-4 nils for whatever team it is. The last thing you want is 1-0s, 0-0s, late goals. I was doing stuff on the Chelsea Leon game, 127th minute equaliser that sent it to penalties. No, thank you. So if you ask me as a United fan and as a journalist, I would say, yep, 3-0, 3-4 goals in the first half, nice and easy job. Then that would be me.
Yeah, I mean, Barry, where do you kind of stand on this? Ellie's saying, pretty much the same as me. Head's already in the final. Are you thinking of it like that, or obviously are you going more Mark Skinner-esque, one game at a time? Let's get Brighton out of the way first, or are you a little bit more like me and Ellie, where we're just turning up, have a bit of a party and already there?
Well, it'd be a bit mad for me to turn around and say I just take it one game at a time when I predicted that we were going to win the league at the beginning of the season. That's like the ultimate projection. So that's a bit tricky. First, I just want to say I totally empathise with Jamie with what he was saying there. People forget there's a deadline for these journalists when they're writing their columns. And I've had that before, granted, for our local paper, and it's an absolute nightmare. Like you say, you get to the end and they don't give you long afterwards because they want to get it put up online. And oh my goodness, yes, it does take speed of writing like you've never known before. So yeah, I do feel for him on that one. But no, I think Brighton, listen, it's the one we wanted. Somebody's already put it down here. Was it Mike? It's what we wanted, Brighton at home. Because what's better than being in your first ever FA Cup semi-final, Connor? What's better than being in your first ever FA Cup?
You go one further, don't you?
Absolutely. Now, you're more likely to do that against a team that is like Brighton than if we'd have drawn Chelsea. If we'd have drawn Chelsea, yes, there would have been loads of jeopardy. Yes, lots of people would have turned up. Yes, there would have been a sense of excitement amongst some of you. But amongst most of us, we'd have all been sitting there going, well, that was a lovely run, wasn't it? We're not going to Wembley because we don't tend to beat Chelsea. Some of you might have been a bit, we did well against them in the last one. We could have won if we'd have been given the penalties. You get all of that. But I would much rather know that we've got a good chance of reaching the final. And as Charlie's already said, as I said before, as long as the players' heads are in the game and they know what it is that they've got to do, they understand their assignments, they go out and do the jobs, get the goals early. Get those players off. We've got Arsenal in the middle of the week. We've got a massive game coming up in the middle of the week. And then you lot want to stick on top of that another high jeopardy game? No, thank you. No, let's not do that. Let's take this game. Let's put it to bed. Good professional first half performance, much like the beginning of the season. Whack 4 past them. Get to half time. Make a few changes. Rotate a few people. Feel free. Do what you want to do with that then. For me, that's what it's all about. This idea of jeopardy. What are you playing at? I know
it's the emotion of football, isn't it? You want that, like.
But we could get that tomorrow. It could be 0-0 until the 90th minute, and we nick a goal against Brighton, and that might hit differently. Or are you just going to come out of that moaning? Oh, we should have put 4 past them, and this is it. You see, it's the modern football fan. They're never happy. Let's start calling everybody Victor Meldrew around here. It's outrageous. I just think we need to be grateful for that we're in a semi-final. It's the first ever one. People that turn up tomorrow will be making history and seeing history unfold. It's never happened before for us. So turn up, enjoy it, have a good time. And then if we get to the final, probably against Chelsea, that's going to be a time, isn't it? That's something to get excited about when you beat Chelsea and Wembley in their own back garden. Yeah.
It's good to say it's basically a second home for it, and then at the minute, the amount of cup finals they played there. Yeah, I know. I see everyone's point. I'm just a little bit weird like that, and just like a bit more in the game. You know, but I agree with a lot of what people are saying. You know, Sports said it there, and I know a lot of people further up said it as well. You know, as Barry just mentioned as well, we've got Arsenal obviously next Wednesday. That is a massive game because that is a jeopardy game because it's a game really we can't afford to lose, because we lose that all of a sudden. Top three then becomes even more difficult, and we don't want that. So 100%, if we can kill the game off in the first half, make the changes, start looking ahead to Arsenal. But as somebody did mention earlier on, a lot of men's team fans thought that yesterday, 2-0 up against Sevilla, started changing it around, and look what happened there. And the game all of a sudden, and now the tie is flipped right around. So,
with the greatest of respect, there's a bit of a difference between a Spanish side that you failed to beat in Europe.
Well, yeah.
Brighton side that you failed to lose against.
I don't. Someone just asked that question if we ever lost to them. I don't think we have we?
I don't believe so. So, you know, it's a tricky one.
Oh, no, we have. We have lost.
We did? When was that?
It was 2021 penalty.
But either way, like we're saying, it doesn't happen much. And that's the point. Whereas Sevilla, we literally never beaten them. So I don't think they're comparable, really, if I'm being brutally honest.
Don't. I feel you. You don't need this. A lot of people don't. And then, yeah, go into that. But there we are. Yeah, a lot of talk obviously about Arsenal. We'll talk about more of that next week. Keep an eye on next Tuesday. We've got a special show, which I'm literally about to record in about half an hour, that will go out on Tuesday, so keep an eye out for that. But we'll talk about the Arsenal game a bit more on Monday's show, and obviously keep an eye out for the special on Tuesday as well. Back to Brighton then. Jamie, is there any changes? Somebody was asking a bit earlier on about kind of lineup predictions and anything that we'd change. I think Lanzell mentioned, you know, Mark Skinner will go strong again. You'd expect him to be in semi-final. Is there any changes you'd make from the last time we played Brighton? The reason that we asked this on pretty much every preview we do. This one feels a little bit different because a lot of fans were a little bit, I think me and Barry included in this one, were a bit confused with Tooney and Vilda kind of operating off the wing. They were kind of interchanged, even though, again, we won 4-0, it worked. But it was a little bit strange, considering one of them is out of position when they play on the right. Is there any changes you'd make to that lineup that won 4-0 down south, or would you kind of stick with the same?
I would say like at least maybe 90% the same. I think it's obviously he likes his settled sides. You can probably pick most positions. The only thing I would say is that Vilda's obviously had a really good season in cup competitions, because that's where her chances have come, and she's tended to score either in the Conti Cup or the FA Cup. So if there's anybody that does deserve a start that maybe not you would expect to on like an everyday normal match, then it's probably her. But I think the question all season has been how you fit everybody in the team and find those balances. I see a comment there that said that TJ is not a fan of Tooney on the right, but I kind of think she works. She doesn't provide massive width, but in those sort of channels, it tends to be on the left that she operates. You can sort of see the triangles between her and Leah and Hannah. So she does kind of work there, and there was times last season when she played there as well, if I'm not mistaken. You correct me if I'm wrong, but she does have that in her. I think over the last just over 18 months to start the last season, the right side of midfield has been the only real position that's not had like what you describe as like an owner, because there's been so many different players that have done different things. I think back to last season, Russo was playing there for a few months in the second half of the season. So yeah, I would expect the team to be 90% as you would expect, and then it's just like the little things really. But I say if anybody deserves a start, it'd probably build up because of what she's done in the previous rounds.
Yeah, I mean, Barry, obviously, we spoke about this at the time after the 4-0, that we were a little bit confused. Obviously, it worked on the day to an extent. I don't think it was great on the day, but as Jamie said, we have seen Tooney play there. Kaz is saying, like, for Bowie to start in the 10, so I'm assuming that's Ladd and Zelen behind. I think they're pretty much nailed on to start. I'll be amazed if it's anything other than that. Is there any changes you'd make? Maybe Garcia on the right is probably the obvious one. I think that people could make the case for. Is there anyone else or anything else that you would look at?
I think John Fry hit the nail on the proverbial head earlier on when he said we pretty much know what 10 of the players should be. It's just that one space that's up for grabs, and it's always that right wing, right forward position. We could name the back five. I can't think for any reason that we would be changing the Earps, Blundell, Turner, Letitia and Battier fivesome. I don't see us changing Ladd and Zelen. That would be a bit crazy. I still see Russo and Galton starting. They're fit. So you would expect all of those positions. It then is probably Toon would be the preferred starter for Skinner. Then it's who goes in that right wing slot. I don't want Tooney or VBR or even Russo, really, to be in that position. And I mean, I'll tell you for why. The main reason for that is because we've bought players who are specifically good in that position. We've got Garcia. We've got oh crikey, why isn't Nikita Paris? I've lost all their names. They just went. It's like it's there. It's the problem when it's live. You hold the pressure. We've got Martha Thomas. So all of these people we've got that can play in these positions. You put Russo or Tooney there if you need to make changes to try and change the game. Personally, I think it would be outrageous, really, if Garcia is not playing, because she's been superb. I get that she's been a good impact sub, but in that case, you put Paris on or you put Thomas on. This idea of putting VBR on and then sort of interchanging them from there, I don't like it so much. That's just personal opinion. I'd rather it was an out-and-out right forward. So that's what I'd like to see. But as you said, it worked. And this is the thing, ultimately, managers are always accountable by the decisions they've made. We've said it before. I've said it a million times on this channel. They live and die by their decisions. And on that day, we won 4-0. So his decision was spot on. So I can sit there and say I didn't like it until the cows come home. But it's irrelevant because we got the win and we got the 3 points. So ultimately, I guess what I'm trying to say to you, Connor, is he could play Sophie Bagley up front for all I care. If she nets in a hat-trick, I'm happy. Not fussed. As long as we win, good times.
That would be quite something.
I'd love it. Imagine the scenes. A perfect one as well. Left foot, right foot, header. Cracking.
That would be something. Yeah, I think the general consensus on I mean, Peter's asked the question: would all the panel have Garcia on the right and Galton on the left? I mean, just very quickly from each, yes, from me, and from that point of view, Jamie, would you go for that as well?
I mean, that's a good option. Yeah. The only thing I would say about that is that, and you never want to be sort of pigeonholed into this. Garcia has made a bit of a reputation as a super sub in the sense of if you've got somebody else to sort of bulldoze the energy out of the opposition, and then she just rinses a tired defense, and that's kind of happened a few times. Obviously, as I said, you don't want to get sort of stuck in that role, but if it works, it kind of works, and it's very different. Over the summer with England, that happened. Like Russo was that player for England. Like Ellen White had run the legs off the defense, and then Russo had like come in the second half and take advantage of that. So yes, I would. Like she works as a starter, she works as off the bench. So
I've left that question on screen. So Lancel obviously asked it a little bit earlier. It's kind of tied into what you were just saying there, James. So I think you've just answered it. But Garcia is an impact sub or as a starter. I think you've kind of just answered it there, but is there anything else you'd add on that one? Where do you kind of see her best role in the team?
I think she can do both. Like if you go back to the Old Trafford game, Mark Skinner said afterwards that they want her to be able to play 90 minutes every week. Maybe not every week, but that is the ambition. They do expect her to be a starter. Take into account the fact that she's in her first season in a new country. There's off-field factors as well that you've got to take into account. She's done a really good job, and I know that people have said that not a lot of the new signings have been that much of a success, but I think she started around half the games and appeared in most of the others, at least as a substitute. So that's relatively successful. You know, she scored a lot of goals as well. So she's made a really good start. And if they expect this to be, like say, just the beginning and then to build on that next season, then I think there's quite big hopes and expectations of what she will do longer term.
Yeah, I think that's a fair answer. Have you got anything, Barry, on that one?
I think it's one of those, isn't it, where like when you think super sub, whenever anyone around Man United says super sub, you instantly think of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer because he was the best example of a super sub you will ever get. I think the thing is, though, is that even Ollie started games. He wasn't always on the bench. And that's the thing. You've got to mix it up. I've seen somebody here suggesting starting Garcia and putting Paris on at the end. And I think that's it. They're interchangeable. We've seen Paris come on at the end of games, terrorise defences, get a goal. We've seen Garcia do the exact same thing. So I don't really think it matters which one of them starts if that's the plan, if that's the tactic. I think the issue for me with the last game against Brighton was the fact that it was neither. And I think that's where it becomes a bit depressing. We can't just go, as much as I laughed and joked about sticking Bagley up front, I would rightly go mad because she's a goalkeeper. And that's the point I was trying to get at. Put square pegs in square holes, please. It's respectful to those people more than anything else because it's their trade. Don't just try doing that when there's perfectly... It would be like eating your soup with a ladle even though you've got spoons, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it?
No comment. There was a question about... I'm not bringing it up on here.
No, I feel like we should have that at the end of it when we finished our serious talk.
Yeah, that's not one for right now. A player that has been mentioned, obviously, across the front line, somebody I did want to talk about because got a little bit of... First time really we've seen it from England fans in particular, but Russo got a little bit of stick, I guess, for her performances for England, particularly in the second game. But to be fair, if anyone watched that, I don't think anyone was great against Australia. But Jamie, this season, what have you made of Russo, in particular her form in the last since the turn of the year, really? Because a lot of United fans obviously have a great admiration for Russo and everything else, and I think there's a fantastic player in there. But this season, her stats haven't necessarily, I guess, backed up, her overall, I guess, price tag, if you want to call it that. It was talking about the fees that Arsenal were banding about in January. What have you made of her form this season? And do you think she does need a couple more kind of goals towards the end of this season to really reach that next level almost?
You said since the turn of the year, so obviously around the time of those bids.
I mean, you can do the full season as well if you want.
You may, off the top of my head, is it she's on 8 goals in the league this season?
Yeah, 8 in the league, 9 in all comps.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I think last season it was 9 in the league, so she's around the same level as she was. Obviously, you might expect year-on-year progression, but I don't think everybody's quite numbers obsessed when it comes to like goals, and if you've not scored a goal a game as a striker, then how good are you? But I think if you look at her all-round game and what she does, that she doesn't just sit between the lines of the penalty area. She'll come deep, she'll push wide, she'll interchange. So her all-round game, I think, is what makes her as good as she is. And then obviously she gets into the box, she has chances. She scored a hat-trick against Leicester. I think all 3 goals are inside the 6-yard box or close to it. So she's got a bit of everything, because you would imagine with somebody who can strike a ball as well as she can, that a 30-yarder would also be perfectly feasible if she got into the right position and hit it well. So I don't think that maybe not scoring double figures or not getting up to 15 or 20, if you look at someone like Khadija Shaw, she scored 26 or 7 goals for City, all competitions. She is like a penalty area striker though, and that is kind of what they do. Like her all-round game. She to draw comparisons with the men's game, you're talking about someone like a Ruud van Nistelrooy or an Erling Haaland who literally just scores goals. Like, they're really good at it, and it's not to say that they don't help the team in other ways, because obviously scoring goals is the whole point. But I think Russo has a bit more of an all-round side to her that perhaps stops her from like really hitting the big numbers. But at the same time, like it's been said a lot this season about United spreading the goals around. I think I did a tweet on this the other week. I don't know if it's changed since then, but there was like 16 different goal scorers or something like that. So most of the teams won't have anything close to that because they'll have more focus on a handful of individuals. So I don't think that you can say that she's performed less well or maybe not met expectations because of the numbers, because say like her all-round game, if you just sort of remember Sky Sports Player Cam in the old days, if you're at a match and you just watch her for a little bit, you'll see how much she does and how much ground she covers. And it's almost like sometimes she's got the opposite role that she had for England in the World Cup, where she is now doing some of the bulldozing to wear defenses down and make the spaces for other people. And sometimes it's a bit of a thankless task because you don't get the numbers on that. But
I was going to say, can I just throw Charlie's question at you, kind of tying into that? Charlie's mentioned this a couple of times in the chat, talking about being a prolific goal scorer. Lanzell was talking about we can see a potential, but still a bit of a way before you start getting into the Miedemar kind of Shaw Kerr level of conversation. In regards to Charlie's question there, do we need a prolific goal scorer? And can Russo get to that? We've got Daly obviously in the league at the moment on 30. The reason I asked this question in particular is because Galton's also on 8 now in the league. So Galton has a serious chance of being our top scorer this season, but all the talk is around Russo. Do you think Russo can be that player, or do you just think that United play differently and don't have that, or we don't have the need to have that central striker that's scoring 20 plus odd goals a season?
Who do you want to answer first?
That was to you, Jamie. Sorry.
Okay. Do United need a prolific goal scorer? I would say on the current stats, no, because everybody scores. That's not to say that it wouldn't be helpful. If you were to think around the league, I thought that somebody like Beth England would have been a really good signing at any point within the last 2 years. I thought that she might have been the one that Chelsea let go when Lauren James went the other way, but it didn't turn out that way. Could Russo be the prolific scorer? I think she could. She's certainly good enough to be that way if the team played that way, but I don't think they play that way. As I said, she's not in the team just to score goals. It's more of an all-round kind of interchangeability with everybody. I think that's one of like Skinner's real sort of philosophies, that he likes some buzzwords every now and again, and I forget what those buzzwords are. But he likes people to not just have one position or to be able to chop and change. It's a bit like drawing on the principles of, say, the Dutch total football, where you can swap and change and it doesn't affect the output because everybody's comfortable doing different things. I'm not saying that Mark Skinner's the second coming of Johan Cruyff or anything. Don't clip that up. But I don't think that United play in a way that a single player would score 15, 20, 25 goals in a season. But she could do that if she played in a team that did play like that.
I was going to say, Barry, that Mike makes a good point there, and something Jamie just touched on there. We are still top scorers in the league at present, so a prolific goal scorer maybe isn't needed as such. Mike's also got an unpopular opinion. If Rachel Williams had started the same amount as Russo, would she be on similar numbers? Not going to lie, I think she would, personally, because I think that's just the way the team is built. But what do you make on this conversation and Russo's form going into this one?
Number one, if wishes were fishes, the world would be an ocean. So I hate that word. It's always banned every time I come on this show. If Sophie Bagley started up front, would she have managed to score as many? Nobody knows. And you can conjecture that as much as you like. And feel free to do so. But don't include me in these shenanigans. I can't be dealing with it. When it comes to Russo, looking at the cold hard fact, she's on roughly a goal every 2 games, which isn't bad. Isn't bad at all, really. When you consider we're talking about a young player still, she's not old. She's 23? 24 years old. And still very much got her prime still to come. Is she our prolific goal scorer? For us, well, obviously she's not at the moment because we've got Galton scoring the goals as well. You can't rely on goals coming from every single part of your team all of the time. That's That's factual. You want to have a striker that you can have lead the line. It makes sense. Every single team needs it. City will be delighted with what Shaw's doing. Chelsea will be delighted with what Kerr's doing. Arsenal, I suppose, at the moment, potentially the ones that could miss out on the top four with the way things are, because, again, they're missing Mead and Miedema. But they're still scrapping those wins. I think for us, I don't know that Russo is, I've said before, she's got the potential. She's not there yet, but she's had more of a breakout season this year, I think, than she did last year. She did incredibly well. There was something earlier on there that said blame Arsenal for ruining Leslie's mindset. I think her mindset was ruined during the Euros, if I'm honest with you, because I think that changed everybody's perception of Alessia Russo. Before the Euros, it was Man United fans that were shouting about Alessia Russo and her potential and how good she could be. Then when everybody watched it, and their mates and the people next door and everybody else, and then she scored that outrageous back heel, all of a sudden she became a household name. And I think it's really made a difference to her then, because I find it really bizarre that this season we're having the level of debate over her that we are. And I think it comes down to the fact that she's entered the public consciousness a lot more. So I think for me personally, is she our number one? I mean, she is at the moment. And 100%, I think she's absolutely superb. But are there strikers out there that are better than her? Yes. Are we going to get them is the question that would need to be asked. And that's whether we make Champions League, whether we win the title, or whether we drop out and finish fourth. Who are we going to get that replaces Alessia Russo? I agree with Jamie. She works hard. She is a hard-working striker, and she does put a lot of effort in. Is she going to be the person that takes us on to the next level? I don't know. But we're kind of on that journey altogether. Mary Apps wasn't the world's best goalkeeper last season, but she is now. So, you know, season's a long time in football. Next season, we could be looking at her and she could well be playing for us up front and shooting us into the Champions League final. Equally, she could be somewhere else. And that's the hard part. So I think it's a tough one. People will, postulate as much as they possibly can about who they think is going to come in and replace her if she goes. I'm just going to trust Mark Skinner because I think he's done a superb job so far finding the people that fit the way that he wants to play and solving the problems that have been created last season. We've not been conceding those silly goals. All of those things that he said we were going to work on, everybody said, oh, just shut up, Mark. We constantly say we need to work on it. They expected that to happen in the next game, which just shows a lack of understanding of how football works. You don't always fix things immediately because you're still playing with the same people. That's like trying to pump up a football with a broken pump and then doing the same again next week and going, why won't it work? I was holding it better because it's broken. You've got to get a new pump or fix it. These things need to happen. They take time or good Amazon deliveries. So, yeah, I think that's where we are. I've got all the love in the world for Russo, but at the end of the day, whoever pulls on that Manchester United shirt, they're the people I'm going to support. End of story.
No, that's fair enough. Sorry, I was just looking at something else. I agree. 100% Lansell. You know my admiration, particularly for Pernilla Harder. That would be a signing I would break the bank for, even though it would be free because they're out of contract. So
signing bonus and stuff.
Well, yeah, but and I think she'd be after a lot of money as well to make that move happen. I could never see that, but
I'm surprised I haven't mentioned Pacheco yet.
Well, that's another signing we could potentially do with some backup fullback with potentially one on the way out. So there's
Hannah going?
No comment. Don't clip that up and say I'm saying Blundell's leaving, by the way. She's not. Or anyone starts throwing at me. Yes, see, Lansell's with me. We're on the same page here. Pacheco, Ericsson, Harder. Me and Lansell are building. We're building a dream team. We are. No. He's not. He's with me. So when me and Lansell become manager, we're going to build a super team. Might not win any games, but we'll have the players there that we want. Dear me. With Champions League, yeah, I think so. I think that's what a lot, why we're not seeing a lot of players linked publicly at the moment to United, because it all depends roughly where we finish. Because we could still win the league, we could still finish fourth. who knows? But there we are. Right, we'll come to your score predictions then. There's a question for you, Jamie, that I'm not going to ask, and I'll let Barry ask it in a bit because I know what the answer is going to be, and I'm going to be wrong again, so I'll let Barry ask it in a bit. But what's your prediction then for tomorrow, scoreline wise? And Jamie, I'll start with yourself.
In my preview that I wrote, I put 3-0 to United.
Barry?
I thought I already said 4-0. I thought we were going to make it the hat trick of 4-0 victories, which would be amazing.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think, I'm torn between 4 or 5, but yeah, 4 is pretty safe to go for. And yeah, I mean, Sporty, you're right. Don't care about scoreline, just want the W. Yeah, don't disagree with that.
Which is good, Sporty, because now we've all decided there's going to be loads of goals. It's obviously going to be a 1-0 win.
I was going to say it. Yeah. I mean, jeopardy, though. Jeopardy's been the key word tonight. Charlie's throwing in an interesting question then. What's your dream signing for United? Money, no object. I mean, I'm torn between about 3. I'm torn between. Again, this will never happen. I'm torn between Harder, Wrighton, and Miedemar. Would be my 3. I can't pick between those 3, so I'll let someone else throw a name out there.
Do you want me to go? I'll pick 2, for very different reasons. So years and years ago, back when United were first, probably before they even had a women's club, but when the biggest player in the world was Alex Morgan, could you imagine like the hype and the marketing opportunities? And then she obviously took a break to have a child. She was out of football for a little bit, but now she's back. You know, she was in the top 3 for the Ballon d'Or and the FIFA award. So that'd be pretty cool. I realize that she's old, well, not old, but she's on the downward slope, as it were. How old is she? Like 32, 33. That would be cool. Even though now, but I think she's a United fan as well, so that would be cool. And the other one would be Aitana Bonmati.
Yeah, I don't think too many are going to complain about that. There's so many good names in the chat. I forgot. Oberdorf is another one from Wolfsburg. Again, that would never happen, but ridiculously good footballer. Sophie Smith's been mentioned. Graham Hansen's been mentioned. Honor, currently one of ours that's potentially out of contract. That would be a good sign. Yeah. Alex Morgan, as Peter's just said there as well. Grace Giora, Chelsea heavily linked there, so I think it'd be tough to tempt her away. But are you Pateas as well? Everybody's mentioned her, but
I said it depends on the position. While you lot were just chatting, I was rudely ignoring you all and just thinking about who I would go for. And there was part of me going with defensively. I'd quite like Brighton Williamson because I do think they bring another level to your game. But I'm just very old school. I'd want Sam Kerr or Beth Mead. I think, I'm trying to think. Everybody seems to throw it out there for, like I say, dream signing. But I'm thinking of keeping the team that we've got. Beth Mead in that right forward position would be quite amazing. Or if Russo's doing the off ski, stick Sam Kerr up front, Garcia delivering balls in there. Happy days. So I'm very WSL orientated. You know that anyway. People are saying Oberdorf. I just want to say bless you because I've got no idea really who they're talking about. So I'm assuming they've sneezed. I don't know.
I mean, speaking of Oberdorf, that is a hell of a claim. Oberdorf is overrated.
Overrated. I've heard of her.
If there's any Wolfsburg fans watching, I don't know. I don't know if I can get on board with that. But each to your own opinion. I mean, Alex mentioned Beth England. Jamie, you mentioned her earlier. That's more of a realistic one. I think that is possible. But
I'd just like to say to Sarah as well, because she's put on there, we don't need more right wing players. I would entirely disagree, and the reason why I would disagree is because the ones we've got haven't nailed down a spot to make it their own. The fact that we can sit here and name 10 players for that squad, but that's the one we always sit there and debate, tells me that we don't have a forward right winger yet who has made that their own. So if they're not going to do so, then to me, that's the place that requires a regular starter.
No, it's fair, but there's so many names. It's ridiculous, isn't it? But maybe that's a show in itself. We'll just see if Lanzau, get yourself on here. We'll talk about we'll try and build a United Dream 11 or something, unlimited budget, and we'll see how many current United players make it into that 11.
Well, that could be depressing, that.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be loads. 2 or 3, maybe. But medias are red as well. But potentially.
True story, bro.
But there as well. Connor watching. Oh, I don't know. I can't get on board with this Don. I got to be honest. I'm not going to argue she's not a bit on the feisty side. She certainly likes to tackle in a yellow card. Her and Stanway this season in the Bundesliga have been sharing that accolade of yellow cards each game. But still, I wouldn't say overrated. There's definitely a world-class player in there.
I mean, TJ just put on there regarding realistic signings, how long is Rachel Daly's contract? And I wouldn't be against having her, 100%. She is also a very, very good player up front. But I was rewatching when that slap came in, you know, the punches on the West Ham. I forget the player's name that did it. Was it Sissoko? And she was the first one in there to stop and defend them. And the reason why I come back to that is because TJ's also mentioned about how McCabe is going to be out for the Arsenal game because of how, obviously, she smacked Kelly over the head with a football. And I just wondered, Jamie, and I don't mean to throw you under any sort of bus or put you under any particular pressure here, so please feel free not to answer if you feel it would jeopardise it. But surely that's more a red card offence than the one that Soon had against Spurs, because she's literally smacked her in the face with a football. And everyone went about Soon's reaction.
When I was watching that game, I was like a bit. You're running the risk there if you're gonna do that. I'll be honest, like it's not really relevant now, but I was a little bit surprised that the Toon red card got overturned because, like, to the letter of the law, like it was soft and it was a bit silly, but sometimes you've got to have like a real body of evidence to overturn it. And I was surprised that it got overturned, and I was surprised that they then turned it around on Simon and the other way as well. Obviously it's benefits United, but yeah, I don't know. McCabe, like, well, she got her a yellow card and she's suspended anyway for an accumulation. But I think I saw a comment on the side there saying anybody but McCabe. I think she's the kind of player that you would love to have in your team, though, because she is like she's like a born winner. She just competes and she can pop up with a goal. She'll put a tackle in. I think she's the player that she's always somebody that you would love to have and that opposition fans love to hate, probably, is the best way to sum her up.
No, I'd agree with that.
Expertly answered. Can I just, the comment section now, it's like I've gone into a different chat. I've got no idea what's going on there. There's loads of players that are just being mentioned. I mean, what Bournemouth? Who's that? It sounds like a place on the coast. Anyway, I'm going to ask you, James, a question that everybody's been dying for me to ask you just before we kick off, because I know that Connor's going to end the show shortly. You know, when you buy a burger from a restaurant and you eat that burger, how would you choose to do that? What would you use?
Has this got any relevance to anything?
Not specifically. No, it's a running thing with regards to Connor. But like, would you use your hands or would you use a knife and fork? Is what we're getting.
Well, I will tell you. This afternoon, I went to Tim Hortons at lunchtime, and I got a burger from there, and I did not use any implements other than my hands.
There you go. There's
All
your
the
answer.
coffee shops are available.
I knew that was going to be answered. That's why I didn't ask it. I'm not asking anyone that question again, because there's no point. I'm never going to find anyone else yet. Maybe into next season. Yeah, see, it can't land up. Funny enough, I didn't mention it this time. It was somebody in the, I think it was John, wasn't it, in the comments that asked a bit further up. Apologies if it wasn't correct. Oh, here we go. Look. Oh, here we go. Yeah, go on, everyone in the comments, tell me I'm wrong and that Jamie's right. But yeah.
We've also seen there asking if Tim Hortons is in England. Yes, it is. It's been a couple of years. It's not as good as in Canada, though.
it's a place that we should be going to or something.
It's a coffee place, but they do food as well and donuts. It's like Canadian, iconic Canadian.
It's good coffee. I've had one from a drive-through there. It was nice.
But yeah, they have them here now.
Not something I've heard of. See, Sarah's with me. I'll be in the Whistling Wren. She's 9 for 4. 100% Sarah. Make sure you get a picture of that because we need to.
Won't need to because everybody else in the room will go, "What is this girl doing?" and take a picture of it for her. Who does it? It'll be all over Twitter, all over Instagram, front page of every newspaper going.
There's that Twitter page in it, Away Day Sleepers or whatever it's called. Take a picture of away fans that have fallen asleep on the coach. That's what it'll be now. People who eat burgers with knives and forks. There'll just be a thread of all just me and Sarah, really, because I think that's all. There's a couple of people out there. No, Charlie, come on. I know I don't know my films, but you know, I kind of got the. Oh dear. Right. Anyway, this show's gone on a little bit longer than we thought it would. Because I'm gonna have to wrap it up because I've got to shoot off into the next one. So Jamie, obviously, thanks for coming on. Where can people follow you and find your articles and all things like that? Obviously, you do a lot of United coverage. So if people aren't following you, I don't know why. So where can people find all of that if they want to find your articles and stuff?
So Twitter handle, just here. And then if you go on 90min.com, there is a women's feed. There's all the different clubs. There's a league feed. There's a United feed. And as I kind of mentioned before, I've started doing some program work with the club as well now. So Hannah Blundell interviewing tomorrow's program was a good one. She was really great to speak to. So.
And can I just say before we go, thank you, Jamie, for everything you've done this year. Because honestly, just from a United fan point of view, seeing the stuff that you put out there constantly every week, asking the big questions, getting the big answers. So thank you very much for being there. I would not recommend this guy more. Get on his Twitter pages, follow the guy. You've been brilliant. So cheers, Jamie. Thank you for keeping us all informed.
No, 100%. As Jamie said, obviously, if you're at the game tomorrow program, make sure you go and get that one. Obviously, we'll be back. There'll be obviously stuff on Twitter tomorrow throughout the game, and obviously after the game as well. So keep an eye out for all of that. Match reaction will be normal time Monday, 7:00. You all know that, and everything else. The special, which I will say who it's with. So Tim Stillman is back on the channel. I'm literally about to record that in just a second. So that'll be going out on Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that. It'll probably go out 5:00-ish. It'll be some point in the afternoon, obviously ahead of Arsenal. Next week's schedule obviously is a little bit different. Obviously, we'll have the match reaction on Thursday for Arsenal, the fans forum. Obviously, be moved to another time with Arsenal next week. So just keep an eye on the Twitter for all of those things as well. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we shall see you guys in the next one.